Alrighty, so the first thing was the actual setup. How were we doing that? So, for our actual setup, what we had was the camera we were using. We were using the ARRI Amira. Lens-wise, we're using Zeiss CP.3 lenses, just standard cine lenses. So our green screen we had was pretty sure it's 3 meters tall. I never actually measured it, but looking at like a person compared to it, pretty sure it's 3 meters tall and it was 5 meters wide. Lighting it, we had I think 4 from memory LEDs over the top, just on C-stands looking back down, and then we had 2 RE2Ks either side of that. We had some diffuser. We were trying to large green screens are nice, but it is a nightmare to light evenly. So we had big diffusers on those 2Ks, and then we had cutters because they were spilling like no tomorrow on the side of them, so that the light doesn't spill back in. For our talent light, we were just using some little LEDs. We used some panel ones, but then we also used these other Dido ones. They're like the single chip LED ones that you can put modifiers on. And then we had an ARRI HMI at the very back, and they were just bouncing that off the roof for some ambience. For the camera, we went handheld, and then we had the dolly. We did have a jib, but the jib wasn't working properly, so we just packed it back up. That was about it in terms of camera gear. We used a 10-meter SDI cable, which worked out plenty fine. A few extra light modifiers and cutters, just to try and... We didn't do the best job at matching the environment light to the Unreal light to the real light. We didn't have any Unreal controlled lights at the time either. Obviously lighting is half the battle in terms of making green screen actors look like they're in the environment, so sort of dropped the ball a little bit there, which is a bit disappointing, but yeah, we gave it a shot. So in terms of tracking, we were just using the Vive. I had one of my Vive trackers. A few people ask me why I mount it the way I do, because I mount it sort of looking forward. First of all, that is the way Vive recommends you mount those trackers. That also aligns so its Z-axis is also Unreal's Z-axis, up and down. The other thing is, when you mount it upwards, and if you imagine it upwards, the camera's on your shoulder, for example, the Vive base stations are only a little bit higher than that, then all those little indents with the sensors are sort of occluded by themselves and the prongs sticking upwards. So mounting them forward like that, they sort of, as many of those sensors as possible get seen by the base station. So the base station, it's complex how it sort of shoots out lasers and stuff like that, and it gets picked up. We were using Steam 2.0 base stations, and we had both the base stations at the front in like a V setup. So they were 5 meters apart from each other at a 45-degree angle, and with those two, we actually found we could go further than 5 meters back with the dolly shot. We went like 8 meters almost, I think, in the end. And so we actually managed to get a bit more out of just 2 base stations, which was pretty cool. That's all going into the computer. We were running, what did we have? We had a 2080 Super in that one. I didn't want to bring my 3090 down. And we were using the Blackmagic SDI 4K, just the basic one with the 3 SDI plugs. And it worked fine. We were only going 1080p for this one, because 4K isn't easy. And then we were going out to some director viewfinders, as well as a Ninja 2 recorder, because that's all we had in hand, and then to a Blackmagic Video Assist on the camera, which in hindsight we probably should have recorded on that instead of the Ninja 2, but I mean, both were just recording basic ProRes, so I don't think there's that big a difference. 1080 is 1080. So the workflow for our setup, so we started by making the scene. Again, we used Liam Tart's kit, which looks modular but isn't. So we spent a lot of time. We thought it would be easier using that than actually making it from scratch, but it probably would have been the same, to be honest, because we had to edit those pieces so much. So we threw that together. We used multi-user editing, all 4 of us flying around. I'm confused as to why not more people are using it. Like, it's just changed completely how we work, especially because we're not all in the same state in Australia. You know, we're all spread all around Australia at the moment. And it's definitely something we're going to keep using even when COVID's done and we're all back together. So we built the scene like that, went in, set everything up. On the day, plugged in the camera, checked that's working. First thing we did was calibrate the Vive. So the way we did that was we just ran through this standing. So we didn't do the room setup, we just did the standing setup in Steam VR, because we don't need the Steam Chaperone or anything like that. So that was simply a matter of, we marked on the floor, because it's like, place your headset in the center of your area. So we marked that as that, because that's where the center is going to be. And then we placed it on the ground and set it to 0 and hit calibrate. The next thing was like putting the goggles on and then using the controller and touching the ground and just making sure that it is in fact on the ground, sort of thing. It's not hover. So it's like, if it's on the ground in real life, is it hovering or is it on the ground in Unreal? Or in Steam VR, sorry. Once that was done, our DP came in. We got the lights on the green screen all proper. They chose their lenses. We started doing some practice shots. He exposed his shot, and then once he'd exposed it, and we got that running, then we did the key. Now, we were just using Composure. We weren't using anything else. No Pixitope, no Xsymmetry, none of that. Just basic ass in Composure. And so we got our key down pat. Obviously, Genlock's already running. What we also did was we used the VR goggles for lighting reference, so we could look around the scene. And then we'd start, we'd get a stand-in actor, we'd start setting up how we think the lighting should be, practicing the camera moves. There's a lot of practicing to make sure, do we go, so you don't go out of the tracking volume, so the lights work, all that sort of stuff. All that sort of stuff. Now, we weren't tracking focus. I have an idea of how to do Vive with the live link, but we didn't. So what we'd do is we'd practice through the shots. We'd decide where our focus was, and then the DP would tell me, hey, the lens is at 15.5 feet. And so then I'd set the camera in Unreal to 15.5, or I would convert it to centimeters, and then set the Unreal camera to that equivalent in centimeters. And that's how and then they just don't change focus for the shot. So, sort of works. Cine lenses are T-stops. Regular lenses are F-stops. There is a difference, and they don't line up. They'll be close depending on the lens. I asked Zeiss, because they make the lenses, but they're on holidays, so haven't heard back from them. I asked on Facebook, and people started fighting, as well as 30,000 people telling me the difference between T-stop and F-stop, which doesn't make sense because it's like, I already know that's why I asked. Didn't receive a solid answer. Some people said just use the T-stop as the F-stop, because Unreal uses F-stop. We just eyeballed it on the day. We didn't get it right, so that's something I've got to look into. Hopefully Zeiss are just like, oh yeah, these are the numbers, and we're like, oh cool, and we just remember that. The other thing to keep note is the mirror, and I can guarantee you it's not the only camera that does this, changes how much of the sensor it uses at different resolutions. So you need to look that up, like a chart of that. We found Ari has a chart of that, and then match that with the Unreal camera. Otherwise your lenses are going to look slightly, you're going to have slightly different FOVs. Now there is a bit of wiggle room in there, but it's nice to get exact. Then once we were done, and everything was ready, our actress came in, lovely lady. She was told to act bored, like it's everyday thing on the space station, nothing special. She looked very unenthusiastic. I'm not sure if that was because she's a good actor or if she's a bad actor. I have no idea, so But she did a nice job. She did what she was told. Recording, so we recorded on the Amira, we recorded on the Ninja 2, which was recording the final comp, and in Take Recorder in Unreal, so we had all of those things. And we'd go through, I think we got in 3 hours, the actress was there, we got 8 takes and 4 different setups done, so like not too shabby, especially considering we didn't really have any plans of shots prior to the start of that day. So I'm quite surprised. So it was quite interesting. A few things, the Ninja 2's Unreal's key is pretty crappy. Like, I thought we had a nicely lit green screen, and it was just mainly it just eats away at the edges of the person, because Unreal doesn't treat like the edge versus the not edge. I guess it can't like detect it. It just keys the whole thing as one. Is my best explanation of that. So it just doesn't have the tools in it to do that, because we're just using the material system in Unreal. So it was not very good. The other thing is we need to work on what we're looking at doing next is matching Unreal camera's dynamic range with the Amira's dynamic range, because obviously the Amira captures, is it 12 stops of dynamic range? I think maybe 14? It captures a certain dynamic range, and then Unreal's tone mapper reduces its linear render into a certain number of stops as well, but they didn't match, and so we're going to go through again and come up with a quote-unquote camera profile for the Amira that matches its dynamic range, its latitude, and its colors. That way they match up a lot better, because we had there was like some blown out highlights and some overexposure and just some very contrasty color coming out of Unreal, and then like a completely different image coming out of the Amira, and then we're smashing together going, oh, that sort of looks alright. But because the keyer wasn't great, what we ended up doing is we just rendered out linear XRs out of Unreal, because then you can tweak it to your heart's extent, the latitude and the dynamic range afterwards, and we comped it with RE footage in Nuke afterwards, and that created a much nicer result. And I think that is the way most things are going to do, because when you really think about it, like, for it to work, we got to send out Rec 709 out of the RE, so we don't even get RE log C, and then we got to comp it, and then we can't change anything, and we can't have RTX on or anything like that. So we decided in the end, we can shoot RE raw, log C, we can get linear XRs out of Unreal, we can push RTX to the limit, take hours to render a shot, and comp them in the final, and it looks so much better. And obviously we're still saving all that time with the camera tracking, because we've already had that camera tracked, and yeah, we've had all that time saved, but we can still give the they've still got the same time code, because the time code goes through the loop back out of Unreal, so we can give them the Ninja 2, the ProRes, the ones we recorded, the already comped ones from Unreal. Doesn't look very pretty, but they can start editing to that together, and then once all the post is done on the actual nice versions, we can give them that instead. And obviously they can go through and color grade it. Or Pixitope, Xsymmetry, Disguise, an Ultimatte, hardware keyer, any of those things, the thing is, you are missing like half the camera's features, like log recording, raw recording for RE or Blackmagic or whatever. You're losing all these things by recording the straight out Unreal. So unless you're doing a live broadcast, I think it's probably just worth it for the extra features. But that being said, you still get, the director can still sit there and look at the monitor and make choices based off the monitor as it's happening in real time. So I think that's the balance we're going to strike up. We're trying, Pixitope only works with an Aja card, so we're getting an Aja card loaner, and we're going to try Pixitope. Fingers crossed Unreal has new keyer, and that's better, but I think at the end of the day, even if they're great, we're still sort of limited to we've sort of put these artificial limits on ourselves with running in real time and all that sort of stuff, when realistically we don't really need to. So that's how I'm viewing this, and I think that's how we're going to be doing it moving forward.